I've noticed over the years that one of the enduring themes of my sermons has to do with perspective, with the manner in which we perceive our place in God's creation. This is one of those sermons. The only way we perceive the world is from the standpoint of our own bodies. When I look up at a blue sky, I can't be sure that I'm seeing the same exact shade of blue that you see because we have different configurations of all the little anatomical bits that make up our eyes. And beyond vision, think of a tall staircase rising before you. Someone with good young knees might think nothing of climbing those stairs. But someone else with older, creakier knees might look for an elevator. I don't know why I looked at you, Angie. She was laughing. It wasn't me. Okay. We practice humility when we remember that ours is not the only perspective that exists. We deepen our practice of humility when we also recognize that our perception rarely, if ever, comprehends the whole story. We see a beautiful sunrise over the Atlantic Ocean and watch the orange orb ascend into the sky. But is that what's actually happening? No. We are standing on a point on Earth which is rotating towards the sun. With this change in perspective on our minds, we look at the horizon and remember that the horizon is simply the limit of our vision, not the limit of the earth. So in today's gospel lesson, Peter, James, and John encounter another change in perspective as they witness what we call Jesus' transfiguration. For a brief moment, they see Jesus in a new way. The boundary between human and divine vision breaks down, and they perceive Jesus as a luminous being, full of the light of God's love and blessing. The boundary between life and death also breaks down, and they see Jesus speaking with Elijah and Moses. With this momentary gift of greater perspective, the three disciples recognize that these boundaries are far more permeable than they realized. We have a tendency to erect artificial boundaries between the miraculous and the mundane. We do this because of our limited perspectives. We think of miracles as God intervening in some event or situation. But the very concept of intervention supposes that God is elsewhere to begin with. If we start from the faithful perspective that God's presence is everywhere, then we have the opportunity to participate in that presence, to be in the midst of God's movement. Rather than waiting for God to come, we recognize that God is already here, no matter the event or the situation. Because God is already here, we believe that God directs everything towards fulfillment. We call this God's providence. And we get to participate in this divine activity. Theologian Paul Tillich says, and I'm going to read this twice because it's dense. Theologian Paul Tillich says, God's directing creativity always creates through the freedom of humanity and through the spontaneity and structural wholeness of all creatures. God's directing creativity always creates through the freedom of humanity and through the spontaneity and structural wholeness of all creatures. You can hear some of those other creatures in the ceiling in the sacristy. Can you hear that from here? I can. Okay. Don't bite through any cords. In other words, all of creation, including us, partners with God to bring creation to its fullest aliveness. All of creation, including us, partners with God to bring creation to its fullest aliveness. When what we perceive as miracle or coincidence or luck or happenstance is part of this directing creativity. When we change our perspective to account for God's providence, we can begin to perceive the great tapestry of relationships that God is weaving towards this fulfillment. Have I scrambled your brains yet? Sorry, I know it's early, 8:18 in the morning. I know this is a heady discussion, so I'm going to use the rest of my time to tell a story that illustrates a moment of God's providence in my life. It is a simple moment, but even simple moments can be shot through with what we think is miraculous. So, the date is December 2009. The place is Berkeley County, West Virginia. I woke up to a foot of snow outside, the beginning of a whopper of a blizzard that would eventually dump 30 inches on the mid-Atlantic region, which does not have the same snowplow capabilities as we do. The problem for me was that I didn't have a shovel. I got out my broom and fended off the wall of snow that was creeping up my front doorway. I felt like Gandalf. That snow shall not pass. And so we'll leave me at my front door for a moment and back up to the early months of that year of 2009 when a dear man from my congregation named Marvin purchased a new car. Marvin had been getting tired of his old Buick, and so he went for a shiny silver Japanese sedan. But within a month of driving the car off the lot, Marvin fell ill. The cancer had been growing slowly, and for a time the doctors held it at bay. Marvin spent several weeks in the hospital until the medical staff, his family, and he decided that being comfortable in his own bed at home was as good for his condition as any drug. For several more weeks, he held on, making his wife Ruby laugh and cry, joking with the hospice nurses, and slowly disintegrating from the inside. Not until his final day did the awareness, the flash in his eye, fade. Marvin died in July, leaving his loving wife, a daughter, grandchildren, a cluttered house full of memories, and a brand new silver Japanese sedan. Fast forward from midsummer to mid-autumn, a deer ran into my little Korean car on the way home from a soccer game. And the insurance company whisked away my Kia to the total loss center to be evaluated. For some foolish reason, I didn't have rental coverage as part of my insurance plan, but I did have something even better. Ruby, who I talked to about many times in sermons, and you might have read a book about her. Ruby found out that I was without a car and asked in her sweet, typical fashion if I would help her out. You see, Marvin's car has been sitting in the garage since summer, and if it doesn't get driven, it will start to fall apart. I would be very pleased if you would drive it for me. I readily agreed to this arrangement after all the while smiling to myself because she made it sound like I was the one doing her a favor. After 2 weeks, my damaged car finally made it to the auto shop, the insurance company having decided it was worth repairing for some reason. This is like a $10,000 Kia. Why? I hope to have it back by Thanksgiving, but the mechanic found more damage than the original estimate. You get the picture, right? Necessitated another visit from the adjuster. So when will it be done, I asked. Well, by mid-December, the mechanic promised. Keep the car as long as you need to, Ruby said. I called the auto shop in mid-December. Oh, we took the car for a spin, said the mechanic, but it needed realigning, so we put it on the lift and noticed something. Did Did you say the insurance company took the car to a total loss center first? Yes, I said, not liking where this conversation was going. Well, the mechanic continued, at those places, they use this kind of crane to lift the cars. We'd have never noticed it if we hadn't put the car on our lift. But it looks like the crane cracked the fuel tank. So we need to get your adjuster out one more time to look at it. Great, I thought. How long? Well, another couple of weeks with the holiday and all that, came the answer. So 2 days later, the snow hit. With broom in hand, I stood on the front step and looked at the snow-covered Japanese sedan. The car had been driven a total of 317 miles before I took the wheel. I had put nearly 2,000 miles on it during the last month. I thought about that dear man, Marvin, a practical fellow who bought the car last winter. I trudged out to the sedan, swept the snow from the trunk, and opened it. Inside was a shovel. Now that's Providence. Amen.